Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very accomplished professional from Zurich, Switzerland, Mr. Simon Becker. Simon, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Simon is the director of Chiway Academy. He's a practitioner of Chinese medicine, and he's the author of several books and papers. So, Simon, before we talk about Chinese medicines, tell me a little bit about your journey, about Chiway Academy, and what is your mission?
So I was born in Switzerland and traveled very early on in my life to the US, where I then started studying Chinese medicine. After I completed that, I went to China to do an internship where in China I met my wife. She's a Korean-born American. And we went back to the US and started a clinic. Our daughters were born there. And about 20 years ago, I came back to Switzerland and started practicing Chinese medicine there, and took over the Chiway Academy. That's a school for Chinese medicine. And I've been living and practicing and teaching in Switzerland since then.
Fantastic. So tell me, you went to the US to study, but what attracted you to Chinese medicine as compared to, say, the traditional path of becoming a doctor?
I was fascinated. At that time, I was studying biology and biochemistry, and I was fascinated by the concepts of Chinese medicine, that kind of holistic and the different worldview. And I got more into it. And in the US at that time, there were already colleges where you could study Chinese medicine. That was not the case in Switzerland. So I decided to study Chinese medicine.
Okay. And your Chiway Academy, tell me a little more about it. Do you offer more courses in Chinese medicine?
Yeah, in Switzerland, since about around 2000, there's training for Chinese medicine. And since 2015, there's a state-recognized training courses for Chinese medicine. And Chiway Academy runs such training courses. They last 4 years for students and train people to become acupuncturists that are then can practice in Switzerland in the health system. And we are a small school. We are very kind of unique small school, but we have about 60 to 80 students and a very, I would say, experienced faculty.
Fascinating. So how does Chinese medicine diagnose an illness? And can you explain concepts like qi, meridians, and yin and yang?
That's a lot to explain, but overall, Chinese medicine looks at the body differently, has a different image of health and disease. And by using this image, we diagnose disbalances and therefore illnesses. And in this image, yin, yang, qi, the meridians or the channels play a big role.
Okay. And are there any kind of misconceptions about TCM that you may want to talk about?
I think one of the common misconceptions is that Chinese medicine is some magic medicine. In Europe or also in the West overall. They think like, wow, this is something, mysterious and exotic and it can cure everything. And that certainly is not the case. Chinese medicine is a great system of medicine and it can do a lot, but it can't cure everything. So I think that's a common misconception.
Well, that is so true because Chinese medicine is quite widely used in a very large part of Asia. But my next question, Simon, is what are some common conditions that you believe TCM treats effectively that are often overlooked by Western medicines?
One common overlooked treatment option that Chinese medicine has, I think, is cancer support. That's also one of my specialties. I believe that not enough cancer patients nowadays have access to Chinese medicine, specifically acupuncture. Acupuncture is an extremely simple form of treatment, And its studies have shown very clearly that in cancer patients undergoing chemotherapy, radiation therapy, or anti-hormone therapy, that acupuncture is an extremely effective and helpful method, and simple and cheap. So I think that's one thing where Western medicine could profit more, or patients could profit if Western medicine includes that more. Like every cancer center in the world should have acupuncturists providing acupuncture to the cancer patients.
You know, it's very interesting you talk of acupuncture. My own personal experience with acupuncture goes back 50 years. You know, my father was an army officer, and I used to have this severe sinus problem.
Okay.
So in the early 70s, I went to the army hospital in New Delhi, and they gave me a course of acupuncture, and I've never had a problem with my cold again.
Yes, I can imagine. That's the story we often hear.
You're absolutely right. So my next question, Simon, is can you discuss the concept of balance in Chinese medicine, and how is it essential for health and for our bodies, of course?
Yeah, balance is everything. When our body gets out of balance, we get sick in Chinese medicine. That out of balance can be in any direction. And in Chinese medicine, that means have a balanced lifestyle in every form, like emotionally balanced, balanced diet, balanced sleep, balanced lifestyle. And of course, in our current world of disbalance, this is even more important today. You know, we are rushing and sleeping too little and always stimulated by media and social media. So this balance is everything for Chinese medicine to stay healthy.
And I'd like to come back to cancer a little more, but you also specialized in the treatment of children and supportive treatment for cancer patients. So tell me, why did you focus on children? And I'd love to talk to you a little more about cancer.
Okay, in children, what I like is their honesty. You know, children are honest, they're direct, they're simple, relatively speaking, in Chinese medicine. The treatment is a bit more challenging because you cannot really stick needles into them. At least in Switzerland, you can't. I don't know how it was with you when you had your treatment for the sinus problem.
I was about 16, 17 years.
Oh, okay. So that's, you can use needles. But for children, you have to use different methods like laser acupuncture or different types of stimulation. But they're very honest and direct, and that's what I like about children. They tell you, this hurts, this doesn't hurt, I don't feel good, I feel good. And there's not so many layers like often that's the case in adults.
And I'd love to talk to you a little more about cancer, because, you know, I've lost a lot of very, very dear ones to cancer in the last 7, 8, 10 years. What is it that Chinese medicine does when it comes to managing a cancer patient?
Well, it's a very good question, because it's important to understand that Chinese medicine doesn't treat the cancer. Chinese medicine is a supportive treatment for cancer patients undergoing the modern Western therapy. But it's exactly the combination that makes the therapy effective, because one of the big or important parts of modern Western medicine treatment is that you can pull the chemotherapy through. And if patients suffer too much, you have to lower the dose, or you have to stop the cycle. And when you do acupuncture, they usually can go through the entire treatment, which is exactly what you want from a point of Western medicine. So it's the combination that makes it so effective.
And is it, you know, more in terms of being able to manage the cancer, or do you think that there is some way to be able to actually see the cancer starting to die out?
Well, it's managing the side effects so that you can really throw at it the whole lot of chemotherapy and radiation therapy. You don't have to reduce the treatment. And by doing that, you kill the cancer, but not by Chinese medicine. But Chinese medicine or acupuncture keeps the patient on a level where you can keep throwing out the chemotherapy and kill the cancer eventually.
Okay.
So it's managing the side effects, managing quality of life. People doing acupuncture and Chinese medicine during their chemo and radiation have much better quality of life. In terms of sleeping, in terms of recovery, in terms of nausea and vomiting, you name it, there's lots of symptoms.
Thank you. And Simon, do you see any kind of an integration of traditional Chinese medicine with Western medical practices?
Yes, more and more in the West. Like I practice we are practicing at a Western medicine hospital, and we get referrals from gynecologists and from oncology and from sports medicine, like surgical patients for their recovery. Acupuncture is also an extremely effective method of helping patients to recover after surgery. But I think one of the best examples is exactly what I now use for cancer patients. It's the integration that's effective and not just Chinese medicine or just Western medicine. And this is also true in pediatrics, for example, for children's treatment. If they have eczema or if they have asthma, it can be effective to combine Chinese medicine and Western medicine. And that's how we work at our clinic. We always combine the therapy.
And my next question is that, TCM started obviously in China, but India, which is another very, very large and ancient civilization like China, has its own traditional homegrown Ayurveda. Do you see any parallels between Ayurveda and TCM?
Both systems of medicine have different images of the body in comparison to Western biomedicine. And their images, though, they differ. Like the Chinese image of the body and the Ayurveda image of the body, they differ. And they also have different instruments to treat diseases. So they are similar in terms of using a different system from biomedicine, but they're different in terms of using a different image altogether and different instruments of treatment.
Okay. And, I've been reading and I've been talking to several people who are in TCM, say in Singapore, and they're saying that the work is going on to be able to see how to bridge Ayurveda and TCM, onto a common platform. Do you see that possibility at all?
Well, there are a few projects in Switzerland going on into that direction where you just put them under one roof. You have Ayurveda and TCM under one roof in terms of like alternative medicine places. Otherwise, I don't know of much combination that's going on here in Europe. In Switzerland, Ayurveda is still less frequently practiced in comparison to Chinese medicine, but it's catching up. And actually, there's also a state-recognized profession for Ayurveda practitioners. So I'm sure in, let's say, maybe 20 years, there will be a larger base, and then maybe also there's a better foundation for combinations or collaborations between the two systems.
Okay, thank you. And what role does diet and lifestyle play in Chinese medicine?
That's the most important. Definitely, there's living a healthy lifestyle and including healthy eating. It lies at the heart of good health. There's no two ways about it. So no medicine can make up for a poor lifestyle or poor diet. So this is always the basis, and up on that you can build up. If you don't live healthy, you don't eat healthy, then you can take all the medicine you want and get healthy.
Okay. So my next question is, I want to come back again to acupuncture. You told me about acupuncture to be able to mitigate a lot of the challenges the cancer patient may be going through. I shared with you my own experience of acupuncture for my sinus. But what are some of the other common areas that you see acupuncture being used for?
Well, one of the most popular, most common one is, of course, pain. and any kind of sports injury or orthopedic injury, pain, and trauma, migraines, this type of pain, headaches, but then also gynecological conditions, any kind or many gynecological conditions, infertility, menstrual pain, etc., react very well. And a lot of functional problems like stress-related disorders are very well treated by acupuncture.
Okay. So time for a few more questions, Simon. My next question is that, when I speak to Ayurvedic practitioners, a lot of them say that there is now work being done to develop empirical data to be able to establish what is happening with Ayurveda. Is there some similar kind of scientific evidence that is being developed to support the efficacy of TCM?
Well, TCM, if you talk about acupuncture, there's actually a very large body of well-done studies presenting that acupuncture, or with evidence base for acupuncture. For acupuncture, I think for many conditions, there is very good evidence that it works. When it comes to Chinese medicine herbs, it's less, there's less studies and the studies are less well done. But for acupuncture, there's no doubt about plenty of evidence. There's, for example, also the Acupuncture Evidence Project out of Australia, where they collected all the evidence. And there's a website called Evidence-Based Acupuncture, where it shows the evidence that acupuncture supports.
Okay, so I have time for two more questions. My next question is, and you did mention that we can talk about stress, anxiety, and depression being handled with acupuncture, but I'd love to get a little more detail from you on how does TCM view mental health, and what treatments other than acupuncture are available for stress, anxiety, and depression, which the world seems to be facing in very large numbers today?
Yes. To answer that question, Chinese medicine does not distinguish between psyche and soma, like the body and the mind is one. And I think there's also one big chance or one of the great advantages of Chinese medicine. Mental health problems are just explained by qi mechanisms. And by regulating qi mechanisms, we regulate bodily symptoms and we regulate mental symptoms. So people having symptoms from stress in their mind, but then also having bodily symptoms from that, they can be regulated at the same time, and we don't distinguish between the two. And acupuncture is a very effective method for stress. I believe actually one of the big reasons why acupuncture works so well in our society is that it first and foremost just takes down and takes out the stress from the system. And this gives a chance for the system to kind of restart itself and work more efficiently and better.
Amazing. And my last question to you, Simon, you've written extensively about Chinese medicine, both in English and in Germany. What are some key takeaways from your books that you would like our viewers and listeners to remember?
Well, our books are written for practitioners and focus on the treatment or the application of Chinese medicine, especially Chinese herbal medicine. All of them have in common that they present the complexity of applied Chinese medicine, and I find that's one of the most important, that we don't simplify Chinese medicine, but we go into the depth and really try to focus on that's what I present in my books, not to make it too simple.
Okay. On that note, Simon, thank you so much for speaking to me. Thank you for talking to me at such length about traditional Chinese medicine and all the amazing things that TCM can do for each one of us. Thank you again, and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.